just wanted today to explore whether or not you're a bit like me in some respects. Do you like to know the ins and outs of a cat's arse? What a wonderful saying that is. I don't know whether that saying is just a UK saying, whether it's a global saying, whether it's just even a regional saying. But do you know what it means? Now, the other interesting thing is, why do they say it's a cat's arse? Why not a dog's? Why is it not something else? Who knows? But what does it really mean? Well, I guess if you're a vet, you'd like to know the ins and outs of a cat's arse because obviously that's part of your job. So you'll want to know the external things, how it looks, how it should be, how it could be, and the internal things equally. What is it like inside? Now, when we're using that expression for us, we mean wanting to know what's going on in the world around us, but wanting to know it on a deeper level too, wanting to understand what's kind of going on inside. So it's not just learning a little bit about something, but it's wanting to know everything, or as much as you possibly can about a subject. And that was what it was like for me, personal development. I needed to know the ins and outs of a cat's arse. I wanted to know what tools, the techniques, why it helped, how it helped in the world outside, the world around me that I can see, and how it made a difference in my inner world. Now, not everybody is like that. We all want different things for different reasons. And sometimes some people just want a short, sharp change, just something that they don't like in their lives. And other people are like me and want to know how they can radically overhaul and make a difference and create some really fundamental and long-lasting change. Now, we come to a point of thinking and wanting and exploring change at different points. Some people never do. Some people do when they're young, some when they're, 30s, 40s, 50s. It really doesn't matter. It's not really an age-related thing at all. When something comes up and feels right for you to look at, then that is right. That is a fantastic time. So there were lots of different points in my life that I've brought about change, and I'm sure that's the same for you too. But one of the really interesting things that really sticks in my mind that got me looking at change in a different way was, I must have been in my 20s. And I can remember seeing an interview where an interviewer was wanting to talk with an elderly, I think it was an elderly man. And he was, I can't even remember what the conversation was, but I remember it was just a conversation with an elderly man. And as the camera panned across to the elderly man, without even a word being spoken, you just really looked at that face of that man. And I can remember it being really, really lined. It was almost like a very weathered look, maybe that you might experience somebody who is outside all the time, maybe fishing, or someone who's lived a real expressive life. But there were lines everywhere coming off the eyes, the mouth, the forehead. It was really expressive, and the lines told a story in themselves. They told the way their lines were shaped, the way they evolved from the different points, from the eyes and from the mouth. And you could tell that there'd been an expression of unhappiness, of not trusting life, of disapproval, just because the way the lines were shaped. And that was even before he'd even opened his mouth and said anything. You could see they weren't happy lines. They weren't wonderfully joyous, expressive lines. These were lines of disapproval. And then as soon as he opened his mouth to answer the interviewer's question, the words, the tone that came forward completely and utterly matched the look of disapproval that was etched on his face. And there was nothing. Everything was difficult. It was a challenge. Everything was somebody else's fault. And the words that came out were just full of not being happy, not living joyously. And I can remember at the time thinking, wow, I don't want to get to that stage when I'm that old. I want to feel joyous, and I want to feel happy, and I want to just see the good in things around me. And that was it. That was the end of that interview. And then a real short while later, might have even been days or a week or so later, something really made me stop in my tracks. And I recalled that interview, and it was like a sudden realization that I was heading in that direction. If I continued my thinking, if I continued my actions, my behaviors, I was going to end up the old person one day that was disapproving, that couldn't see the good in things, that looked for what was wrong rather than what was right. And in that moment, I felt a sense of shock and a real sense of realization. And once that ebbed away slightly, what replaced it really quickly was the sense that this was my opportunity to change. It wasn't for anybody else to do anything. It was for me to do something. I could change the way that I saw life. I could change the way that I felt inside. Now, bearing in mind, I had been doing personal development work for quite several years at that point, because I'd started reading personal development books when I was about 18 or 19. But what I found is that change, or the positivity within me, only lasted as long as I read the books. That very quickly after finishing reading a book, I went back to old habits, old behaviors. I didn't embed any of the learning. It was just temporary help. But now I suddenly, with that realization, had a choice that I could really learn so much more about personal development, the ins and the outs, how it changes the outer world and how it changes the inner world. But not just with other people. I had to start with myself. I had to start by understanding what was showing up was a reflection of what was going on inside. And the way that I could change that was by changing the way I felt, the way my perceptions, the way I saw the world. And that was such a wonderful realization that any moment we have that point and choice to change. And change doesn't come from outside of ourselves. I've spoken to many people where they say, I want this person to be different, or I want this person to be different, and I want this situation to be different, and then I'll be happy. But life doesn't work like that. We become happy by realizing that happiness is always an innate part of who we are, and that it's our thinking and our perceptions that really are like layers of an onion above that. It's a bit like the sun is always shining above the clouds, and happiness is always flowing within us. It's just when it's a rainy day, we have the clouds obscuring the sun. But that doesn't mean the sun isn't there. And that's the same with us. Happiness is always there. It's just sometimes we allow our perceptions and slightly flawed thinking, if you like, to shadow the fact that happiness is there. So are you interested in knowing the ins and outs of a cat's arse? Do you really want to understand change? Do you want to get a deeper understanding of yourself and to move in the direction of life that feels more joyful, more peaceful? I can know from my experience, and I'm still on this journey that is called life, of course, and change will continue right up until the day that I pass from this life. But I can feel, even in this journey up to this point, how much I have changed. That my choice to change was a definite, it was a part of that journey where I wanted to say yes to a greater experience and expression of happiness. So I'm really grateful in some ways to seeing that interview with that man, because it was one of the catalysts that helped me to see that where I was heading in reality wasn't where I really thought I was heading. I thought I was going to be somewhere joyful, but in reality, the way that I was living my life at that point is I was heading towards being that unhappy, grumpy, disapproving person. I don't want that. I don't want that for me at all. So what do you want? I would love to know what you would like answers to. What's up for you now? Where are you going? Where do you want to see some change in your life? So please put it in the comments below, and we'll see if we can do some videos about that, because that would be great. So like, subscribe, share, comment. As I say, put in what feels the journey, that and the expression, and what's up for you and what you'd really, really like to change. And I look forward to hearing where you are and what's going on for you. So we can always create change at any point. And it's knowing how much of a journey do you really want. So join me for the next journey next week, and I look forward to seeing you then. Have a really great rest of your day.